Hi everyone, in this video I want to show you how to create those rocks. So whenever I'm creating some sort of effect that requires me to have rocks, I usually dive into my generator, into Houdini, and export a couple variations so I could just use them for my effects. Okay, so I thought maybe I'm just gonna record a video on how to make those very simple rocks so you can actually start using some variations in your effects. Okay, so let's dive into Houdini now and let's create this very simple generator in Houdini. I'm gonna start with geometry nodes. I'm gonna press tab and start typing geometry. I'm gonna call this rock generator. I'm gonna dive inside and I'm gonna start with sphere. I'm gonna change the sphere to be polygon and I'm gonna increase the frequency to 10. Next, I'm gonna bring RBD material just to create some chunks from the sphere. So it's gonna take some time to calculate the initial pass. I'm gonna use the explode view just to see how those chunks and pieces looks like. I'm gonna dive into the RBD material now and I'm gonna tweak a couple settings. So the first setting I'm actually gonna tweak, I'm gonna change the volume scatter points to 10. That's gonna increase the number of chunks. I'm gonna dive into details. I'm gonna enable edge detail and interior detail as well. Okay, just taking some time to calculate everything. And in here, I'm gonna change the noise amplitude to 0.2. I think that's everything I'm gonna do here. So I'm just gonna go back to my RBD material because this is just for the debug stuff. And next, I'm gonna use connectivity node. However, I'm gonna change the attribute to be ID instead and maybe primitive for the type. And next, I'm just gonna bring for each primitive loop. All right, I'm gonna click here. I'm gonna enable single pass. It doesn't work, so I'm gonna enable piece attribute and I'm gonna get this ID attribute we created under connectivity. Just make sure it's set to primitive and you change the attribute to ID. And now if you go here, you can just have those pieces enabled to you just with the slider. So the next thing what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna get align axis node. What it's gonna do is just gonna bring my rock pieces to the center. I'm gonna change this to center as well, so it's actually it sits right on the center. And now maybe let's do some optimization. Okay, so I'm gonna use remesh. In here, I'm just gonna change a couple settings. I'm gonna change the target size to be maybe 0.05. I think 0.05 seems to be okay. I'm gonna get some normals as well. Okay, and maybe the poly bevel, just to get a little bit softer edges. So I'm gonna enable it. And actually, I wanna change my preview to smooth shaded. And under poly bevel, I'm just gonna change a couple settings here. So I'm gonna go into exclusion. I'm gonna ignore flat edges. I'm gonna change the setting here maybe to 40, 20. Oops. Try maybe somewhere between 40 and 20 to get some decent results. I'm actually gonna go with maybe 35. Okay, for the offsetting as well, which is here, I'm just going to enable a distance, but I want a very small value, something like 0.002, because I want those edges just a little bit to be beveled, not too much. I don't want them to be too soft in the engine. Everything else I'm just going to leave it default. Maybe I'm just going to change the division to 2. And now if you go back to your for each loop and change the single path, you can get those chunks. Obviously some of them might be broken, but this is just a very simple setup, so just make sure that you're actually exporting the ones that look cool. I quite like this one's got really good amount of details. The only thing that really bothers me is this here. It might be not visible in the engine, however, you might want to go to your remesh and tweak a couple settings here, or poly bevel, maybe change the maximum normal angle to 40, just to smooth out some of the edges. Okay, so that's basically how I've exported my rocks from Houdini. So that one actually got 7,000 vertices. If you're doing like a demonstration or kind of portfolio piece, it might be a good idea to maybe get a bit high poly model to get a little bit better details there without applying any normal maps or sculpting yourself. However, if you work on a project, you probably want to reduce your target size, maybe 0.8 or even 0.1. You're still gonna get interesting edges, but without that much detail. And you might want to reduce your poly bevel division with 1. And let's check now. Now it's roughly around 2,000 vertices. So I think that might be a better idea to export this instead. Let's check how it looks. It's still got really nice edges, and I still think it looks pretty cool for the effect. Right, so I'm just gonna select my for each loop and try different passes just to see if they look okay. And obviously the last node will be the transform. I'm gonna even call it game engine scale, and in here I usually export my meshes with 50. Side effects recommends 100, but I like to go somewhere in between, and I can tweak the scale manually later on if I want inside of the engine. Okay, so very simple rock generator in case you're making some sort of effects that require you to have a very quick and interesting looking rocks. So it might be a good idea to try it out and see yourself if that's something that you need. Obviously it's a very simple setup, so I encourage you to expand on it and create even more interesting rocks if you are working in a production. Alright, thank you so much for watching.